Hello, everybody, and welcome back to That CMMC Show. Today, I am joined by the DFARS CMMC guru himself, CUI expert, Brett Cox. He is joining us from his lovely home office and supporting the Boeing CMMC DFARS PMO. So he has had years and years experience on the DFARS, on the FAR, on CMMC, on CUI, you name the acronym. Brett's going to be able to talk to us about it today. And Brett, I didn't want to steal all of your thunder, so I'm going to let you do a little intro yourself. Who is the great and magical Brett Cox?
Well, very kind words, Daniel. I really appreciate it. I cannot claim to be any of those things, but my title is that I'm the principal and team lead for what we call our DFARS/CMMC Program Management Office. So we handle all of the cybersecurity regulatory requirements for the U.S. government contracts that the Boeing company has, be that the FAR 52.204-21, the 25 clause or section 889 is in our office as well, plus everything that is DFARS cybersecurity related, and NASA and other government agencies that have requirements. We also operate as what we would call the information authority for CUI at the Boeing company. So in our policies, we list all of the people, all the subject matter experts. Our program office is the go-to place for controlled unclassified information at the company. So kind of joke that some people call me the DFARS guy, some people call me the CUI guy, but it's not just me. We've got a team of 13 people that are real rock stars and make Boeing look good.
That is amazing. Because here's the thing that a lot of people, I think, that are new to this space, I'll call it, right? You and I, we've got our lashes in over the few years that we've been in this.
Still have the scars.
That's right. It's like a lot of people don't understand there is a significant need for what I'll call CUI program managers. I'm seeing more organizations start deploying that as a resource and a job because of data flow, right? It's either I'm overmarking something or I'm getting something overmarked. I need to challenge that. Or I might get something undermarked and I also need to challenge that. Or, hey, I might want to de-scope CUI appropriately or decontrol it down to my supply chain, right? And so people don't understand the importance of an office like that. Honestly, no matter the size of the company, you could be a small business. Someone needs to kind of be the CUI czar, if you will, to make sure that you're following and implementing all the correct controls and that you're pushing back appropriately on when something is or isn't CUI, because that's what can kind of help this process along quite a bit. So the fact that you have a team of 13 people all working hard on this, that's very, very encouraging, right? Because you got a lot of bases to cover. Boeing's a big company. You guys got a lot of bases, a lot of contracts to cover, and FAR CUI hasn't even happened yet. So just wait, right? I bet it's going to get even crazier.
It is, and it is such a difficult, spot because, as you know, that in the upcoming 48 CFR Part 204 that we're expecting, that the prime is going to have responsibility for determining what type of information is going to be passed down to the tier 1 and then to the tier 2, the tier 3, et cetera. So the prime is going to have that responsibility as far as we know it from what we saw with the interim rule that was published last August, that we as a prime will have the responsibility to say, tier 1 prime, you are going to get CUI that will require a C3 PAO certification. This tier 1 will only require a self certification because they're not going to be handling anything in the defense index grouping, or that we may have a tier 1 that is only getting FCI or federal contract information, and we will have to make that call. So we have got to be spun up. The companies that hold the CUI have to completely understand it, just like you said, and know what they're passing to their supply chain, because they are anticipated to be responsible for those requirements. The security classification guide, and if you happen to have a DD-254, also is not going to specify what is what in every case. You're going to have to make some of those judgment calls. You're going to have to be spun up on it. You're going to have to be knowledgeable on CUI and have that relationship with your programs to understand what level of information that you're dealing with and what protection requirements are going to be there. CMMC level 3 based off of NIST Special Publication 80172, is going to be even more complex, because now we have something that's still marked exactly the same as the other CUI, but has different handling requirements, has different requirements out of 80172 that must be followed. So
and that's the
what do you
interesting
have?
thing. They've kind of created this critical CUI category for level 3 that people are like, okay, I know I need to handle it differently, but what exactly is it? Like critical technologies, how's it going to be marked? That's a whole nother kind of fun story and kind of rabbit trail to go down, right? Because you have 2 different types of CUI at that point.
Absolutely. But you still only have one type of CUI, because
Right.
you would have to convince NARA and ISOO to change the rules as the executive agent for the entire federal government to add that to it. So DoD has gone above and beyond what the ISOO rules are for protecting CUI, and saying, well, we're going to have some things that are going to be a little bit more sensitive. They're not going to quite reach confidential as far as a classification scheme. They are still going to be unclassified, but we need to make sure that the protections around them are even more robust than what 80171 has to offer.
See, and I love that. I love that the DoD is, we call it the canary in the coal mine, right? The DoD is basically putting in cyber regulations that in lieu of, and honestly, of FAR CUI being a real thing for such a long time, DoD is like, we can't not protect this data, right? We're going to come out with DFARS 7012. And then we realized people weren't really following that. And so now we're going to make it a little bit more mandatory with third-party certification requirements at certain levels. And then to your point, we're going to also kind of raise the bar a little bit for, maybe it's like controlled technical information, but it's extra sensitive controlled technical information to us. So we might throw that into a higher level kind of certification requirement with CMMC level 3, which some of this gets to like my first kind of major question to you, which actually caused me to reach out to you, Brett. Boeing sent a supply chain newsletter out with your name all over it. I was like, who is this Brett Cox guy? I got to talk to this guy. And you were actually quoted in it 2 things. One was a quiz, basically about the kind of top 10 things to know about CMMC, which I think was a great primer, especially for people that don't know anything about it. Definitely start there. And then the other one was you saying, hey guys, like the line's getting kind of long out here to get certified. If you're going to require that for CMMC level 2, like you probably want to go ahead and get in line. Can you tell us a little bit more about kind of what you're seeing in the industry from potential blockers or things that people maybe downstream in the supply chain should be concerned about from a capacity, from a cost, any kind of thing you can think of?
Well, really, it's about the conversations that are happening in the industry. And, you of course see a lot of them on LinkedIn, and, the CMMC quiz was kind of fun. What do you have the basic understanding? The only problem is there was no banana option for each one of the,
we love the banana option. Jacob Horn, shout out to you, my friend.
There was no banana option. So you couldn't say, I don't know what CMMC is, or I don't know the answer to that question. And that is one of the big problems right now, as you know, is that we're still seeing in the Cyber AB town halls, we're still seeing in events where people are putting in the chat, what is CMMC? What does C stand for? What is this? Why am I going to be required to do it if I have contracts with the Department of Defense? So it's still very much a challenge of how do we ensure that we reach out to everyone and make sure they understand what these requirements are going to be. Because, to your point, we've had the 252-204-7012 clause came out in 2016, had to be implemented by December 31st of 2017. And then it was self-assessment. And everybody said, DOD, we're good. We got this.
Yep.
You don't have to worry about it. We're 100% good. We've got some POAMs out there, but we can fix those. Well, we didn't tell you that the POAMs are 10 years from now, but we do have to, we're going to get there. We've got this covered. And that was when, the birth of CMMC was all about, well, is everybody ready? Is everybody ready to face a nation state attacker? And the answer is, well, that's very hard. That is very difficult, because they are called an advanced persistent threat for a reason, because of the advanced part. Advanced tactics, methodologies, etc. And by the time that 2019 rolled around, where the DCMA DIBCAC, the Defense Industrial Base Cybersecurity Assessment Center, anybody who went through that assessment very well knows exactly who they are, started starting with the primes. So Boeing was one of the companies that was in the initial first couple of that in-depth assessment against the 110 requirements of 800-171. Well, that was on a 3-year cycle as well. And then when they started seeing that, well, not all these companies are ready, even though they said they were, but we're not going to be able to touch everybody. We don't have enough people in government, so we need to stand up a mechanism for doing this. Hence, what was at that time the CMMC AB accreditation body was stood up to start issuing C3PAOs and creating them to go out and perform these assessments on behalf of the Department of Defense. Well, as we all know, CMMC, what was 1.0 and then became 2.0, and now they've said, no, we don't use numbers anymore, just CMMC. We put in extra requirements that weren't in NIST 800-171. So they didn't exactly follow what the standards that the Department of Commerce through NIST had stood up as this is how you protect CUI. So we were kind of going a little bit far afield from the intentions of NARA and ISU to make sure that we're protecting it, and others couldn't follow suit. So NASA didn't have, they're not going to come out with exactly the same requirements because their needs are different. So by consolidating and focusing just on NIST 800-171 in the CMMC 2.0 was actually, in my mind, one thing that really made this go forward, and that's why we are where we are today. And the interim final rules that came out, the 7021 clause at the end of 2020 that went into effect at the end of November, and that even still says in it today, they haven't changed it yet, even though we know it's not real. There are no CMMC requirements starting October 1st of 2025.
There is not.
From several years ago. You don't have to panic, as they would say, keep calm and CMMC on, okay? Keep working on it. You're not going to have a bunch of assessors showing up at your door with contracts on October 1st of this year. But that evolution has really brought us to where we are today, and it is a really hard thing because not everybody has heard of it, even though we've been talking about it for 5 years, 5+ years since CMMC 1.0 came out. It's still, unfortunately, a little bit of a shock and surprise to people, even at CMMC level 1, saying, I'm supposed to have a firewall? Well, that's news to me. I didn't know that. Well, when you signed that contract, you were attesting that you were compliant with the FAR 52.204-21 clause, which included those 15 requirements that became CMMC level 1. So DoD is out in front. They were the first to adopt the CUI model back March 6th of 2020. I remember that because it was my sister's birthday.
Oh.
They were the first to require some sort of self-attestation beyond what you do in SAM.gov to say that I am compliant with the FAR-21 clause. So really looking forward to DoD leading the way and in really getting a hold of what CUI is. And as you mentioned, sometimes we're overmarking, sometimes we're undermarking, and that's part of the customer is still learning to understand CUI themselves. So I'll be giving a briefing to a group of special government employees in September. I myself am also, in addition to what I do for Boeing, I'm a special government employee. I am what's called an Army Reserve Ambassador. So I work for, well, special means free. So to the government, special government employee means free, but as a volunteer to the Chief of the Army Reserve. So I represent the Chief of the Army Reserve to the state of Missouri. It's kind of fun. It's I love it. I've been doing it for 7 years. I get to give kids full ride scholarships for joining the Army Reserve and serving as an officer for 8 years. And it's also kind of fun because I have the same protocol as a 2-star. It doesn't get me anything, But I did get
Kind
a
of
mint on
fun
my
to say at a dinner
pillow.
party, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I did get a mint on my pillow at one of the on-post hotels. So
There you go.
I mean,
Holiday Inn Express.
I, and that's what's funny is it actually is an IHG hotel. So,
Oh,
but
oh
it's
man.
there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. There's no doubt about it. So anything that people can do to help spread the word, such as your podcast, is huge. It is absolutely huge. What we did with the Cyber Academy, what I'm going to
Mhm.
be doing at a thing called Secure World here in St. Louis.
Yep.
I'm going to be speaking about CMMC in the middle of September. Anything that we can do to get this out in front of people and get them used to the acronym and understanding what it is and what it's going to be required of them to be part of the defense industrial base is huge. So that's one of the advantages as an instructor at St. Louis University, which is the oldest university west of the Mississippi and only one of two Division I universities that teach CMMC. The CCP classes and the CCA classes aren't usually people who want to take the exam and become assessors. They're people who want to learn more about CMMC. So that's how I advertise my class, is that this is the official curriculum that you can, but you don't have to, but come and spend some time with us, learn what the requirements are going to be, etc. So it's been a great experience, and as a provisional instructor for the Cyber AB, I've had an absolute blast. I've been teaching, I guess, about four and a half years now. The CCP and CCA classes, having an absolute great time doing it.
So I know you mentioned, Brett, in the newsletter that went out talking about CCAs and CCPs. Obviously, there has to be a collection of these for a C3PAO, and you have to get certified as one. You mentioned that there's a growing backlog in C3PAO assessments. And so it's got a lot of people concerned, right? They're like, oh no, like if I get a contract that's going to require CMMC, how fast can I get certified? And it's kind of a chicken and egg problem, right? It's like they don't want to get certified until they have the requirement. At least this is what we're seeing. And on the other side of it, like if they wait too long, they're not going to be able to get certified in time. And so one of the questions that we had talked about is, if I'm a subcontractor and I, am working with a prime, what questions should I be asking as a sub to make sure that I'm well informed of what my prime is going to be requiring of me? Because the DoD requiring something of a prime is actually going to can be different than what the prime can require of a sub, because those are private contracts, right? So a prime could come in and say, we want you certified, but the contract might be able to allow them to self-attest, but it's a private contract. So if I'm a sub and I'm new to CMMC, and just to your point, right, we're trying to educate people here, like what questions should I be asking upstream to my contracting officer, to my prime, saying, how do I get ready for this thing? And when do you need me ready by?
Well, and let's clarify one thing. I don't think there's a backlog yet.
Okay.
So, but the danger is there with only having 77 C3PAOs and 400 certified CMMC certified assessors, and each assessment now requires 3 CCAs to complete, 2 as part of the assessment and 1 as the QA person. That you can see the math doesn't add up. Because we're looking at DoD's original estimate is there's 300,000 contractors out there that will need CMMC of some sort. So be that a level 1, the person who mows the grass at Fort Bragg will have to be a CMMC level 1, because they have to protect federal contract information. But the other one is DoD estimated approximately 88,000 they anticipate will need CMMC level 2. Now, they've also come out with some statistics on what they think that is going to be self-assessment versus C3PAO certified. But in reality, I guess the real challenge is that every contract is going to need both.
Yeah.
Now, the big determining factor, and this is the one thing that the DoD has said in the memo that they published, is that CMMC level 2 self-assessment will not be able to be the defense index grouping. Well, that includes controlled technical information, which a lot of your big primes, that's the majority of our contracts, because the information is technical. It is governed by ITAR or EAR license required, and therefore is technical. So that is going to be the lion's share of what a lot of the large primes are going to be pushing down their supply chain. Now, there's going to be, of course, a ton of things that are outside of that controlled technical information, such as TRICARE, such as building a hospital on a post, such as, doing different things that are going to require access to infrastructure information or critical infrastructure, et cetera, that's not automatically exempt from being self-assessed. We'll have to see what those contract requirements are. The DoD so far has only said the defense index grouping is going to be a no-go. That is absolutely going to require a C3PAO assessment.
And that is going to be really interesting. We kind of look downstream a little bit, because so much of the defense industrial base, manufacturing, a lot of controlled technical information, like drawings, schematics, blueprints, basically anything with military or defense application, in a lot of ways, if you were to kind of boil down that category, could easily fall in scope. And that's one thing that we just keep looking at consistently. And we're like, man, with the Defense Organizational Index being in scope for certification, that's 60% of a lot of what our clients see maybe is that type. DoD distribution statements, B through F, another good example. So yeah, I'm with you, Brett. It gets a little dicey out there, which as a sub, it can be a little confusing to people, because they're like, what do you mean I have to be certified? I barely know what CUI is. I'm seeing this requirement down. It's like, oh, well, you've actually maybe had it the whole time. It's like, and you probably just weren't paying attention sometimes, So, which that got me to my next question, which you actually already answered: certification or self-assessment. How should I plan? Number one, ask your prime based on the data you have. And to your point, Brett, the DoD came out with a memo in January, February, March of this year, giving guidance saying anything in the Defense Organizational Index, certify. Anything outside of that, we're going to allow self-attest unless the DoD deems high risk and they want to elect for a certification as part of that. So just because you might have self-assessment in that category in that memo doesn't necessarily mean every time it'll be self-assess. The DoD loves the word discretion, and they add it in there a lot because of the nature of the work they're doing. They want to make sure they're protecting the data appropriately. And you, as a contractor, should also want to protect that data. It is your customer's data. That data is not your data. It is your customer's data, which in this case is the actual DoD. Now, Brett, the one thing that I love talking about, because you mentioned this earlier, DIBCAC runs a report on this all the time. And the commonly most overlooked or under-implemented CMMC requirements. I'm a small business. I'm a subcontractor. I've seen enterprises of tens of thousands of people down to 10-person machine shops. And the irony of all this, Brett? They're all typically missing the same requirements. There's not one that's glaring for small business. There's not one that's glaring for enterprise or mid-market. It's like, how in the world, are we all collectively missing some of the most basic controls? So from your perspective, what are some of those controls that it's like, for the love of God, people, just let's focus, let's get these off the ground, because these are critical and they're often either under-implemented or they're just overlooked altogether.
I would say number one is multi-factor authentication, and that's requirement 3.5.3 in 800-171. Now, there is one loophole that if you are physically touching a keyboard, you don't have to multi-factor authenticate. But that's actually going to change in 800-171 revision 3, where multi-factor authentication is going to be required for everything. But there was a study, and I can't recall off the top of my head, that was conducted probably about 6 months ago, and it came up with a number of north of 90%. I think it was 92% of all of the breaches in the last 10 years, 92% of them would have been thwarted by having multi-factor authentication.
Wow.
It was an amazing statistic. I was completely blown away by it. We'll have to see if we can find the reference for that. But I can't speak to 92%, but let's just say most attacks can probably be thwarted with multi-factor authentication. And I think that's number one with a bullet, that if you don't have that, because that isn't in, the verb I use is poemable. I haven't found it in the dictionary yet, but we're using it, poemable.
Look out, Webster's. It's coming for you.
It's coming. It's coming. It will be the word of the year here soon. Forget, what you see in the, CNN at New Year's, but it's not an option. If you don't have multi-factor authentication, you fail your assessment. Right then, right there, there is no go back. And as we've heard Matt Travis say, that 10-day period after you complete your assessment is about existing evidence, not creating new evidence. So you don't even get 10 days at the end of your assessment to fix your multi-factor authentication. You are either met or not met right then and there. There is no not applicable.
People think they're that 10-day window. I didn't realize he had said that until he came to our CS2 conference this year and said it from the stage. And I'm like, oh, I think a lot of assessors have been giving almost like a 10-day grace period to, hey, go quickly implement this and then show us your evidence. It's like, no. That's for reevaluation of existing evidence and implementation, not a go back, not a 10-day get out of jail card. Like, it's like, no, you have to have implemented it by time of your assessment.
No, and if you want to associate it with something, it is almost like the same as the 10-day reclama period that you had during the DCMA DIPCAC high confidence on-site assessments, where you could have a policy signature replaced, or that if you needed to do another interview, that you were able to submit, even a rebuttal to a control that was being judged as OTS or other than satisfied, that you could explain yourself, you could submit more information. And that's, I think, where Matt's trying to go with this. But up to Matt saying that, I think it was very much interpreted as, this is your 10-day period to fix whatever you need to fix. Now, I kind of personally think that is a good idea, because I don't care, as long as you're getting it fixed, that means it's fixed. You're protecting CUI now. Okay. And if you can do it in 10 days, hallelujah, get it done. And maybe that 10-day period is your motivation to get something done that you've been on the cusp of, but now you have, I'm going to have to do a whole lot less paperwork, and I'm not going to have to hire a C3 PAO to come back and do a POAM closeout. So, I liked that, call it kicking it in the sides and spurring it along, so to speak. But that's what Matt says, that it should not be interpreted that way, that it was not its intention, and that he's asked DOD to clarify that in 32 CFR, and also that they will be clarifying it in the CMMC assessment process, the Cyber AB's cap.
Which I think that's going to be definitely need a kind of an all hands meeting, right? Hey, we've updated the cap. FYI, that period of 10 days, this is how you actually treat that. Because that's the problem. It's not canon yet. It's been said from multiple conferences, like, hey, this is the intent. But until it's canonized, we got a little bit of a problem on our hands, right? It's kind of left up to interpretation, which we do not want to continue to happen. So, Brett, with all this being said,
if you are the C3 PAO and you haven't been going to the Cyber AB town halls, you may have never heard of this.
Yeah, this might be breaking news to you. So go back and watch the episode. We're not lying. Matt said this from Cyber AB. This is the actual intent of how it was written. So, well, Brett, with that, this has been an incredible episode. Thank you so much for joining. I always love to leave my guests with closing remarks. You are talking to the world wide web of thousands of viewers of this podcast. What do you want to say to the industry, whether it's a prime, a sub, the IT guy sitting in a corner scared to death about this thing? What would you like to say to the people?
Well, first of all, thousands of viewers is a lot better than my usual going out to tens of viewers. So I'm glad to be able to reach a broader audience about CMMC, because this is important. Okay. Yeah. The reason I do what I do is because I love the warfighter. That's why I volunteer. That's why, in nonprofit associations, why I volunteer as an Army Reserve ambassador. The warfighter is my passion. As you can see in my toy shop behind me, I also keep models of all the programs that I've worked with. I just got 2 models that I started rearranging, T7A, the new Air Force trainer, the 5th Gen Air Force trainer. And I finally decided to buy one of the CH-47Gs, the Special Operations Chinook. So on that side, that's where the Chinook is going, because he's a big boy. That is a big guy.
That's not a small model.
Now, I will admit, okay, I've worked on all these programs. I'm not quite old enough to have worked on Apollo. Okay, so that
That's good
one,
to know.
but that's my Lego Saturn V, so he gets a spot. So
it's funny, Brett. I live in Huntsville, Alabama, and I am line of sight of a Saturn V rocket right here from
love
my
that.
house.
So
It is wild.
My Saturn V story is I have 2 bucket lists. One was to see all 3 of the Saturn Vs, the real Saturn Vs that remain, and all of the remaining space shuttles. So I've finally seen all 3 Saturn Vs, and I have one more space shuttle at the Science Center in LA that I have to see, which I think is Endeavor, which is out in LA. But yeah, and that's I love Huntsville. I've been down there several times. I try to get down there at least once a year, if not twice a year. You're probably used to the AUSA conference, the Associated United States Army.
Yeah.
I'm actually the president of AUSA for the Midwest. So I have 9 states in the Midwest. So I am one of the AUSA region presidents. I love the warfighter. I'm more involved in the Army now than when I was in the Army. So and I don't have to go to the desert. So I don't have to get deployed.
Well, and that's what I was talking to a friend about this not too long ago. People have a little bit of the wrong mindset of CMMC. This is kind of our modern day space race, right? Sputnik was launched, which really was a catalyst moment for the United States to say, hey, we're now on a rush to get to the moon. We have to beat Russia, right? Now, CMMC and cybersecurity is not as sexy as building a rocket and going to the moon, but it's definitely critical in protecting the warfighter and our own critical infrastructure. I mean, cybersecurity is one of those things where it is our new modern space race, but because it happens in ones and zeros, people don't think about it as often like that. And so that's why I really like what you're saying, Brett. It's like we get to protect the warfighter in a way that's basically just doing business as normal, right? Let's standardize and accept the cyber policies. Let's do them for the protection of the United States, of the people on the front lines. And yeah, I really appreciate all your service, Brett. Thank you so much for jumping on and participating and being a voice in the industry. I'm hoping to have you on again, my friend. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And stay tuned for the next one. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a good one, guys.